These systems were built for us, by them, because what they're doing is only legal because they left us these avenues of remedy. Now again, remember this is brought to you by the Shield of Souls Assembly, created to get you this information specifically. It's also brought to you by Green Mountain Greenery, all organic tinctures. Check out the products, it'll blow your mind. Now sit back and enjoy number 3 of fraud from birth.
And I'll ask you now, please, as a professional, answer the following question. If they take your passport and they take all the bank accounts in your name, and they take all of your cryptocurrency accounts in your name, and they seize your house because your house is a mortgage, and they're going to find out what that is, and they're going to get a new piece of paper from a judge, and they're going to seize that. What do you have left? And where? And can you access it? Can you access it from jail? How do you move that money around? How do you pay for people? People don't even think ahead. They save up some money and they put it in their NatWest and they're like, oh, I'm free. You're not free of anything. NatWest will take that off you.
They just split second.
So then you have to sit and go, okay, how do I prepare for the ultimate level of matrix attack with my money? Well, you can put things in other people's name. That's one way. But then if they work out who those people are, they're going to take that too. So then you have to sit and realize, well, how do the elites do it? The elites don't own anything. Trust funds own things. Shell companies own things. Then you have to go deeper down the rabbit hole and realize that you need to start setting up these extremely elaborate corporate structures just to protect your car, because otherwise you're going to lose it. Most people at home don't realize how fragile they are. And you're very fragile if you're broke, but you're also very fragile if you're rich and you're not prepared for the matrix attack, because it's going to come. It's going to come for you.
They have to prove you're a person. Now, how do you prove you're a person? You admit it. What is a person? A person is no good thing. It's not a citizen. They can't prove I'm a person. They can't even prove I'm a human being. They can't prove I'm a natural person either. Let me explain what a human being is. A human being is a monster. And a monster, if you go back in the Ballantyne's Law Dictionary, 1948 version, published by University of Southern California, specifically states, is a human being by birth, and originated in the 12th century when the kings and knights were going across Europe. Along the way they fathered a few children. And to keep those children from inheriting the sovereignty and the thrones, they call them human beings, being like a human. But they do not have the right to hold sovereignty. They cannot be sovereign. That's right out of court cases. So that's why the federal government and the state government both use the term human being. Place in the penal code anymore do they use the word citizen. They used to. In 1972, there used to be section 228 of the penal code. It said any citizen who fights a duel cannot vote or hold public office. Section 232 said any person who fights a duel cannot vote or hold public office and has to go to jail for a year, making a legal distinction between a citizen and a person. That's in the penal code. So understanding the difference between person and citizen, how do you bring this to the court's attention? Very simply, you file a judicial notice. You can file as many as 30 judicial notices into court and make the court argue those judicial notices. File a court that I'm not a slave. Judicial notice that I'm not a slave. File judicial notice I'm not a person. File judicial notice I'm not a human being. File a judicial notice that I have no contracts. File a judicial notice, write this down everybody, new people, nisi prius court. All courts in this land are nisi prius courts, contract courts, revenue courts. And you have to give the court notice that they are nisi prius court, and they can't move forward until they prove that you have the contract and produce a contract. You can do that. We've had judges accept it. We had a judge in Santa Barbara said, yes, we're nisi prius court. But my buddy, he didn't. Then the judge went on to the next judicial notice, and he didn't stop. Remember? But he had the court. He should have stopped right there, proved the contract.
He outsmarted a bank and gave them a taste of their own medicine with a very simple trick. Dimitri got a flashy credit card offer in the mail, but noticed the fine print had an interest rate of 45% as opposed to the advertised 12%. So Dimitri rewrote the fine print with terms he would be happy with, adding 0% interest, no fees, unlimited credit, and even added penalties the bank would owe him money if they changed the agreement or tried terminating the contract. He sent it back to the bank, and to his shock, the bank actually signed it. pocket. And that's when the fun began. For 2 years, Dimitri had unlimited spending power before the bank even realized they had been played, and tried suing him for late fees, but the court ruled in Dimitri's favor. He then countersued the bank for breaching the contract, and they ended up settling by giving him a 30% cashback card.
No matter what you do, if you do it right, non-assumptive, file judicial notice, non-assumptive. Non-assumptive means no contract. We do everything by judicial notice as a motion to dismiss. You can file as many motions to dismiss as you want. Quorum nobis. You can do quorum nobis up from now till the end of time. Every time the judge does a mistake, you think is a mistake, do a writ of certiorari on him. There's many different ways to keep the ball in your court and make them start proving everything. That's the key element to make the other side prove every single element. Officer, would you, under penalty of perjury, will you tell me what you saw? Well, I saw this motor vehicle. Objection. Define what motor vehicle is, according to law. Since you saw it, that's only hearsay what you saw. Let's define it according to the law. What is it? Well, I was told that everything four wheels is a motor vehicle. That's not what the court said. What does the court say a motor vehicle is? What's the case name, Steve?
Geico.
Geico Insurance versus
Carrier's insurance.
Carrier Insurance. Motor vehicle means commercial, according to California. So he's got to prove you're involved in commercial activity. Officer, was I involved in any commercial activity the time you stopped me? No. Was I driving a tractor, trailer rig, or anything, bus or anything? No. You weren't involved in anything commercial that I know of. Thank you, officer. Next question. Officer, did you go to police academy? Yes, I did. How long was your police academy? 6 months. Did they teach you the laws that you were enforcing? Yes, they did. Do you think you're an expert in enforcing those laws that you were taught to enforce? Yeah, I know the laws I'm supposed to enforce. Thank you. Now you got it.
So did you know that the federal government is simply your employee? They're a corporation. They were hired by the nation states to provide collective services, which include the 19 enumerated powers, which are constitutions. Most people don't know there's actually 3 constitutions, and I'll get into that on the next slide. And they do not apply to living people. The Declaration of Independence applies to living people, and our sovereignty is recognized in the Treaty of Paris of 1783. Our ultimate sovereignty comes from our Creator. We're given this inalienable rights, but the human government recognized it at the Treaty of Paris. Did you know that when we recite the Pledge of Allegiance, we all did when we were little kids, is an undisclosed contract with the corporation? I won't read all this to you, but that's basically what it says. They're just another form of indoctrination.
These liens that are recorded against people by the government for tax liens are nothing more than allegations. They are non-substantive. They have never been determined by a neutral third party, such as a court, to have one shred of validity.
If you ever get a notice of an audit or anything else, the first thing you should do is a Freedom of Information Act request for records that they're using to substantiate or justify the audit.
There is nothing in the Internal Revenue Code that creates any such thing as an income tax evasion or crime. There's nothing in the code that allows IRS agents to seize property. The government is involved in judicial blackmail. The government knows that if it legally seizes somebody's property, that person doesn't have the funds and he can't even get a lawyer who can help him.
I conducted investigations in the Title 18, the Criminal Code, the U.S. Criminal Code. And in there, the statutes and the regulations are very specific as to what's violating the statute. In the Internal Revenue Code, Title 26, there's nothing specific in there. I mean, even the FBI is feared of the IRS.
You have to understand that an agency which will unlawfully impose a tax that doesn't exist is not going to care. If we, the people, don't know what our rights are, they're not going to tell us.
If Americans just learned that the IRS was actually knowingly deceiving them, that would be enough for them to rise up and put a stop to it.
Speaking of the IRS and taxes, dude, this video was from the early 2000s. Past employed workers for the IRS. They all left because they figured out federal income tax is non-constitutional, and it's actually, there wasn't a law put in place, so they're like, people are just paying federal income tax when they don't have to.
Unlawfully.
And someone put out a thing, they said, if you can find the law that says you have to pay federal income tax, we'll give you $50,000. And that's how the one IRS agent found it. And she's like, there's no law.
We have to pay federal tax.
She even said upwards of 60 million people in the U.S. in the early 2000s were not paying federal income taxes. And then one guy that was highlighted on this, he's like, yeah, I'm not paying taxes on that. And he was brought to court. Wait a second, we don't have a law. And so they couldn't charge him with anything. Someone put out a reward if you can prove that the IRS, it's illegal for them to collect federal income tax, we'll pay $300,000.
Need to prove that it's legal?
It's constitutional, that it's the
Okay,
law.
got it.
No one could, but then the IRS came out and said, actually, no, here, in this section, section 3 of this article, it says that you have to pay it.
Yeah.
Proof that IRS taxes are voluntary.
We collect $3 trillion a year in a voluntary compliance system.
It is critical to the integrity of the U.S. tax system, which is only functional because taxpayers voluntarily pay their taxes. According to the National Taxpayer Advocate, 98% of all tax revenue paid by American taxpayers is paid voluntarily. 98% is voluntarily.
We have to maintain the confidence in the system because it's a voluntary system of payment of our taxes.
Agreed.
Inexcusable activity took place because it erodes the confidence of the American people in a system where they participate voluntarily. We need to clean up and clear out so we can go back to the business of making sure that people respect the fact that we have a voluntary system of paying our taxes.
It's probably ultimately damaging to the sense of voluntary compliance, which underlies our entire tax system.
Due to constitutional limitations, most Americans are not required to file income tax returns and pay income tax. The U.S. government finances its operations from the unconstitutional creation of fiat money, not with revenue from income taxes.
I call a magic money computer any computer which can just make money out of thin air. That's magic money.
Finding the votes to pass a spending bill can be hard, but finding the money is never a problem. They just create it. No taxpayers were involved in that process. It was all done using nothing more than a computer keyboard.
I think we found now 14 magic money computers. Where
14, okay.
They just send money out of nothing. They're mostly at Treasury, some at HHS, one or two at State, there's some at DOD.
IRS commissioners like John Koskinen and others publicly told us over and over that IRS taxes were voluntary.
Voluntary compliance system. Voluntary compliance. Voluntary compliance. Voluntary compliance. Voluntary compliance.
Exactly. The IRS compliance rate is entirely based on...
I volunteer as tribute. I believe we have a volunteer.
If there were a law making us liable, that they would have shown it to us by now. If the public knew the truth, they would no longer believe the lie.
An agency which will unlawfully impose a tax that doesn't exist is not going to care. This is the Internal Revenue Code. The unlawful application of this document by the Internal Revenue Service has enslaved the nation that this document attempted to free.
You are being extradited from Spain, an ally in Western Europe, a NATO country, to the United States by the U.S. Justice Department to face life in prison, 109 years, for tax evasion. You're not a U.S. citizen. The period that you're being charged with evading American taxes, you are not a U.S. citizen. My first thought is, maybe it's not really about the taxes. Maybe there's something more to this story.
More than a decade after I had already renounced my U.S. citizenship, and just a couple of weeks after I published a book on the hijacking of Bitcoin, how it no longer works as peer-to-peer cash for the world, it's suddenly right after my book gets published that exposes how people claiming to work for intelligence agencies hijacked Bitcoin to do that. Suddenly I get arrested and tossed in jail in Spain and trying to be extradited to face more than 100 years in prison. So effectively to die in prison is what they want. As the founder of Bitcoin.com, co-founder of XRP and blockchain.com and a bunch of other companies, I literally seeded the entire first generation of cryptocurrency companies. And so they're furious at me for trying to have something that can compete with the US dollar as the world's medium of exchange and currency.
As we all know, that our U.S. tax system is a voluntary tax system, and we depend on people willing every year to sit down, fill out that form, and pay their appropriate amount of taxes. So I really think enforcement is a reward to those who voluntarily comply. And I think if the public does not see that the IRS is enforcing the laws, we're going to be at risk of losing people continuing to voluntarily comply.
Wait a minute. In communist China, you only pay property tax one time and you own your home for a lifetime? Wait a minute. In China, you only pay tax one time on your vehicle and you don't have to replate it every year?
We've been lied to.
Wait a minute. If you make under a certain amount of money, you don't pay income tax? They take your share from the very rich elite? Wait a minute now. For $20 US, you could buy a week's worth of groceries? Hold up. Hold up now. Wait a damn minute. You mean all parks and zoos and museums are free because they are public property?
That makes sense.
Wait a damn minute here. The U.S. government has stepped in shit. We don't only smell it, we see it, and they now know that we know it.
Find me somewhere in the Bible or in these spiritual scriptures where it says that the government needs to sign off on you getting married.
Exactly.
Find that for me,
Yeah.
and then I'll comply. Are you married under God or are you married under the government? Do you want a third person in your relationship, and do you want them to tell you how to split your money if you end up splitting in the relationship, or do you want to make that decision on your own? Is the contract between you, or is the contract between you and the government? The government wants to get involved in every part of your life, so the more you can keep them out of your life, the better. You don't need a government contract in order to stay loyal to somebody, so take that into consideration.
By the way, family court is not a court of law. You can look it up and find out for yourself. Family court is called a court of equity. However, if you are dealing with a child support hearing, in most cases, that is a child support magistrate, and that person who was in that proceeding in most cases is not even a judge.
Every once in a while I get so pissed off that I'll hire a lawyer for 8 hours. We'll go down to the Title 4D court in Dallas, Texas, where the child support court, Title 4D, they're actually called Title 4D courts. We have a statute in Texas. I printed it out somewhere, which basically says the courts are always to rule so as to maximize Title 4D reimbursements.
Yeah.
It doesn't say in the child's best interest. It's to reimburse Title 4D. So they'll have black men lined up in the hallway going out to the street, and they're just putting them in jail. All of them are just going to jail. So I'll just sometimes I just get so pissed off about this that, I just hire a lawyer, and he signs a contract for $1 with these guys, and he just stands there all day and just represents these people and keeps them out of jail. It just pisses me off.
for you.
But here's the deal. They go off the Title 4D reimbursement program, and when they put them in jail, they go into the prison reimbursement program, which is $93 a day. So the government just looks at these people as, fathers as just like economic transaction.
There's a federal law called Title 4D. It was passed in the late 1970s. This is the cause of the divorce explosion in the 1980s and the creation of, there were no family courts in the early 1980s. They didn't exist. They were created specifically because of Title 4D. Title 4D provides for matching funds for the collection of child support. So I don't know about Virginia, but I know about Texas. In Texas, it's $500 million. It's $480 to $520 million per year. The more child support that's issued, the more money the state gets in reimbursements. The more it collects, the more it gets in reimbursements. The entire Texas Attorney General's office is funded by the child support collection matching funds from Title 4D. Texas actually has a law in the Texas Government Code, which requires all judges to rule in cases in such a way to maximize Title 4D reimbursements.
Wow.
Before anything is heard in case. This explains a lot of peculiar things in family court. Family court's known for giving custody to the dysfunctional parent, and they just do it consistently. They do it all the time. I watched a case ahead of mine one time, and they gave 2 children back to a heroin addict mother who had successfully passed the drug test after 15 days for the first time.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
What was the
Why would they do
alternative?
that? That makes no sense, right? Everybody goes, nobody in their right mind would do things like, why do they do it? Here's why they do it. The state knows full well it will never collect child support from a heroin addict. And all that matching money, they don't get it.
Got it.
They know that the responsible parent will bankrupt themselves to protect their child and to take care of their child, and they'll get all the matching money for that. So the decision in family court doesn't come down to, are you a fit and willing parent? If that were the case, then in 99% of the cases, you would have both parents getting 50-50.
In the 1980s, the miracle workers were people who challenged the system, the police industrial complex, by saying, I can't pay the fine because I don't have lawful coin and currency with which to pay it. And it's illegal for the city or the county to force me to pay a fine in Federal Reserve notes, which are not lawful currency and rejected by the Constitution. These MWs, or miracle workers, founded the money movement and gave attorneys generals and courts headaches for many, many years. In our day, the MWs are First Amendment auditors and people who say no and record their interactions and make court cases out of them. And I think that you can be one too. And you have to realize that it's in your town that the work is done. It's not done at the appellate level. It's not done in the media. It's done personally in court. When you say no, you're a belligerent claimant person, and you say no, I'm not agreeing to that. Show the evidence. What evidence do you have? Am I not do proper hearing, proper due process? That's us, MWs.
The 1980s miracle workers were fascinating. They challenged the system by refusing to pay fines with Federal Reserve notes, arguing they weren't lawful currency under the Constitution. Their argument stemmed from Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution, which states, "No state shall make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debts." They maintained that paper Federal Reserve notes weren't constitutional money, only a representation of debt. What's interesting is how this connects to the property tax auction we just watched. The fundamental question becomes, if you truly own property, how can someone else sell it without your consent? That city official was surprisingly candid. They're not actually selling your property, they're selling the tax fee. It's a clever semantic distinction that masks a profound truth about our relationship to property. The belligerent claimant approach mentioned is powerful because it forces the system to prove its claims rather than presuming your consent. When you declare, "I'm not agreeing to that," and demand evidence and proper due process, you're exercising fundamental rights that often go unrecognized. For anyone wanting to research this further, I'd recommend looking into Hale vs. Henkel, 1906, on standing, Murdoch v. Pennsylvania on taxing rights, and the distinction between allodial title versus fee simple property ownership. The key is understanding that consent is the foundation of legitimate governance, not force.
This person mentions allodial title, but there's no context for it. You know, it's funny because my dad always used to say about Minnesota property, it's allodial title. The bastards can't tax it. But we need to understand what allodial title is. There are two different types of title under which property real estate is held. One of them is feudal title, and the other one is allodial title. Under a feudal title system, the property that you occupy and that you manage is not ever truly yours. It's always subject to some higher authority or some superior power, like a king or some kind of government or a landlord. Property system that existed in Europe for centuries was a feudal title system. Tenants of that property worked the property and they were able to enjoy some of the fruits of the produce from that property, but it was always subject to leases, to rents, and to superior control by the landlord or the king, right? The United States set up a system of allodial title. Allodial title is a system under which there is no conditional ownership. The person who owns the property is the ultimate superior sovereign of that property. It is not subject to rents. It is not subject to leases. It is not subject to some outside control by a higher authority. Allodial title means full ownership with no superior claim on that property. Now, here's the problem with that idea. Even though the Minnesota Constitution provides for allodial title, the fact of the matter is it's a feudal system. And the reason is because there are three types of claims that government agencies can put on property. Number one is land use restriction. The government can tell you what you can do on your property and what you can't do on your property. The other claim to the property is eminent domain, where a government can step in and say, we're going to take your property for public use. Now, they have to give you compensation at fair market value if the government's going to take your property for public use. But the fact is, they can take your property for public use. And then the third one, and of course the most common one, everybody's favorite, is real estate taxes. Every single year, year in and year out, even after you've paid off the bank and even after you've covered every other expense for that property, local governments, county governments typically, come in and assess the value of your property and say, okay, now you get to pay us X dollars of real estate taxes for the right to own that property. If you don't pay the real estate taxes, you lose title to your property. All right, so that's a feudal system, friends. It's not unconditional ownership. It's not absolute ownership. It's subject to the control of some higher power in this case, a government entity. I actually testified before the Minnesota Senate on this very issue in the mid-1990s. The legislature of the state of Minnesota was talking about jacking up property taxes here and there. I appeared before the Minnesota Senate and I testified about Article 1, Section 15 of the Minnesota Constitution, which nobody reads, by the way. And if they do read it, they don't understand it. Here's what it says. All lands within the state are allodial, and feudal tenures of every description with all their incidences are prohibited, which is a beautiful sentence. It's a beautiful sentence. It prohibits eminent domain. It prohibits land use restrictions, and it most certainly prohibits real estate taxes. But of course, the leftists in the Minnesota legislature, that goes in one ear and out the other, and they didn't, they just had no impact on it. But the fact of the matter is, friends, you don't own your property as long as you are holding that property in what is called in modern U.S. law now fee simple ownership. So even though it's supposed to be an allodial system, in practice it operates as a feudal system, and that's why the government is in their pocket year after year after year, even after they paid for their property.
Do you believe you have the right to aggress against those peaceful sovereigns who do not consent to your government?
Well, I wouldn't say that we're aggressing. The city obviously can't force a person to make a payment on their property taxes, but will get their fair share of the cost of providing community services. And the way they do that, of course, would be to sell the property if ultimately that's required.
How is that not force?
Well,
because, I mean, if I don't pay my property tax, I'm not just going to walk out of my house and hand you the keys.
Right.
That leads me right into the next question, because if it's possible for the city to sell what I thought was my property, then I own a piece of property here in Keene. I paid for it. I own it outright.
You own that property.
It is. You're saying I own that?
I believe you own that property.
How can that be that if I own the property, that the city can sell my property out from under me without my agreement?
Well, it's a process that's been provided for by the state legislature in order to develop the revenue source that's necessary to offset the cost of police, fire, education, things of that nature. There's a total cost of government, and there is a constituency for every aspect of it, and it's determined to be in the common good. And the one way, of course, is through property taxes. And it's through the common good that the actual assessment is made. The fact that you don't recognize it as a benefit to yourself, apparently, it does not absolve you from having to make that payment. And if you don't, then the city would be justified through state law to take the property on the tax lien and to sell the property, pay itself that which is necessary to operate city government, whatever your tax bill is, and then deliver you the difference.
No, let me talk to you for a second, man. Can I ask you a question? Brother, anybody? Anyone? You guys are being really secretive.
No, I didn't hear you. What'd you say?
Are you guys fighting against the selling of the house in McCormick?
Oh, no one's fighting.
Okay.
No fighting, you're bidding, yeah.
We're bidding. Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I see. Well, see, the only reason I asked is because they tried to do the same thing to me last year. You know what I'm saying? So
was it like taxes or was it?
It was property taxes. Yeah, it was property.
Tax sales. Yeah.
Huh?
So in property taxes, like within a year you don't pay it, it's gone.
Yeah, you can get it back, the right of redemption. But you'd have to pay that plus like 20%.
20%, yeah.
Yeah, to get it back.
I just went ahead and paid the taxes on the property just to get them off my back.
Oh, good.
Yeah. How you gonna sell my house for $1,200?
It's the tax. What they sell is the tax. It's a tax deed they sell.
The tax deed they're selling. Okay.
Yeah, and then what happens is once they sell it,
then the person can claim the property, right?
For up to a year and a day.
Yeah. And if you're not able to, it's done.
Then the person can. Then it's gone.
Wow.
Yeah,
wow.
Man.
Okay.
Yeah, best of luck.
You better pay taxes, goddamn it.
Oh, yeah.
I ain't paying the motherfucker. Bang.
Let's bring this home with some practical clarity about what we just watched. What's happening isn't actually the sale of the house itself. It's the sale of the tax lien. The distinction is crucial. When they say, we're selling the tax fee, they're acknowledging this reality. The purchaser at the auction isn't buying the physical property, but rather the right to collect on the tax debt, plus interest, that 10% mentioned. The homeowner still has what's called right of redemption, typically a year and a day to pay off the tax debt, plus that additional percentage to the lien holder. Only after that period expires can the lien holder initiate foreclosure proceedings to take actual possession. As for what he should do after discovering the auction, first, he should immediately file a notice of interest with the county recorder's office asserting his superior claim to the property and challenging the jurisdiction of the tax authority. This creates a cloud on the title that makes it harder for the lien holder to proceed. Second, he should submit a conditional acceptance to the tax authority, essentially saying, "I'll pay the alleged debt upon verification of your claim," and demand they prove they have jurisdiction over his property and that he consented to their authority. Third, he could establish a private trust or assembly membership that holds beneficial interest in the property, separating legal and beneficial ownership in ways that make collection more complicated. The key is acting quickly and creating administrative records that challenge presumptions of authority before the redemption period expires. Most people make the mistake of fighting within the system rather than questioning its fundamental jurisdiction.
I really hope you enjoyed number 3. I hope that it's coming together for you now. If it's not, you can always rewatch this series and get even more each time you watch it. I've seen this stuff a million times and it's not for nothing, because each time I watch it, I retain something more.